Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be going over the history and geography of Chile. And as you can tell by my setup here, Chile has a very unique shape. It is the world's longest country. So no matter what map I use, if you want to see any kind of details, it's going to be set up a little weirdly. So I'm just going to have to adjust my camera right here so you can see all of Chile after I go over, while I go over the geography. Then we'll talk about history, and then we'll flip through this book right here to look at some fantastic pictures of Chile. So to start us off, Chile borders 3 different countries. It borders Peru right here. It has this border here with Bolivia. And then this long border all the way down with Argentina. And along this border you can see the Andes Mountains. A very distinct geographic point of interest for Chile, because the Andes Mountains pretty much dominate its entire border with Argentina, which is very, very long. As you can see by here, I can't fit it all within the shot here. The highest point in Chile is right here. It is Cerro de Ojos del Salado, and it is the world's highest volcano. Chile has a lot of volcanoes. It sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, so it has literally about like 70 or so active volcanoes. It constantly has pretty major earthquakes. We'll talk about one of them in its history. And it's, I mean, you can tell by the high Andes here, one of the world's highest mountain chains, that there's a lot of seismic activity happening in this corner of the world. So you get volcanoes and things like that. Also up here in the north, we have the Atacama Desert. The Atacama Desert has the world record for the world's driest place. The least amount of rainfall in the world. It pretty much gets rainfall every couple years or so. But it's very important for Chile because there's lots of minerals to be mined in this area, in particular copper. Chile is the world's largest copper exporter. And it's also important for astronomy since it's very, very clear skies. Not a lot of clouds or rain or anything. There's a lot of observatories to study space in this part of Chile. Really, really interesting, I think. The longest river in Chile is also in this area. It is right here. It is the Loa River. There's lots of important rivers throughout Chile. I mean, as there is in any country, but anyway. Moving down south, you can see it gets a little green. Let me adjust this a smidge. We can go down Chile. You can see it gets much greener. This region down here is known as the Central Valley, and it's where pretty much all of the farming happens within Chile. It also has a lot of major cities, including the capital city of Santiago. You can see right here. Valparaiso is the biggest shipping port city, amongst you can see many other major cities along the valley here. And then of course it's bordering these huge Andes Mountains. Let's move a little bit further south if I can. Alright, that's as far south as we can go. Down here we have the largest island belonging to Chile. This is Chiloy Island. And as you can see, we have lots and lots and lots more islands as we get further south. And as you can see, it's turning very, very white down here. So this region of Chile is known as Patagonia. And down here we have lots and lots of glaciers and fjords, things like that. Not very inhabited. Down here, let me move this out the way a bit. In the south down here, we can see the Strait of Magellan cutting right through here. This area historically is when the Panama Canal didn't exist. Ships had to sail down to go up to this coastal area of the world to reach, like, you know, like the west coast of Mexico and the United States and Canada. They'd have to go through here. Also down here is the island of Tierra del Fuego, which, as you can see by this border, it shares with Argentina. Another very large island, but the majority of it belongs to Argentina. But lots of other teeny tiny islands. Down here we have Cape Horn. You can see the Beagle Channel, named after Charles Darwin's ship. Cape Horn is the southernmost point in South America and Chile, of course. It's also the southernmost, like, inhabited, quote-unquote, place in the world. Chile is the southernmost country in the world before it reaches Antarctica, which is not very far from here. And in fact, Chile does have territory in Australia as well. Oh, Topple's in the shot. Hey, Topple. You don't belong in this video, dude. There's no elephants in Chile, but I'll just leave you over there, I suppose. So anyway, Antarctica, right, has territories belonging to Chile. Chile also has other overseas territories. We have the Juan Fernandez Islands, but most famously would be Easter Island, which is very famous for its moai statues, those giant heads along the coast of the island, which you'll of course see pictures of in this book. And in a nutshell, that's basically the very basic overview of the geography of Chile. As you can see, it's a land of a lot of extremes. We've got dry desert, lush fertile valley, high mountains, glaciers and fjords, and even Antarctica and tropical islands as well. So let me see if I can slide this down a smidge so that you can see some of the areas we're going to talk about in its history. I suppose that works. So let's get into it. So, in about this area over here, this valley is known as the Monteverde Valley, and it's where a lot of early human evidence has been found as late as 18,500 years ago. The majority of ancient civilizations in Chile were in this area. There was some farming a bit farther north, but there wasn't any, like, huge societies formed. They were predominantly hunter-gatherers, tribal villages, kind of things like that. But the biggest and toughest of all of them, they're so tough they're still around today, still going at it, are the Mapuche. And they lived down in this southern area here. So the Incas are just up here, their neighbors to the north up in Peru, and they started expanding south, and they met with the Mapuche, and the Mapuche are very tough, fierce people. They fought back against the Inca, one of the most powerful civilizations in all of the Americas at this time. And they fought a battle at the Mali River, which is not on this map. It's about here or so. And the Mapuche won. So the Incas are not allowed to pass this line here. And that's how it was until the Spanish arrived. But first, Ferdinand Magellan sailed by down the Strait of Magellan in 1520. But serious colonization did not begin in Chile until 1540, when Pedro de Valdivia came down from Peru. And he founded the city of Santiago the next year. The Mapuche people were, of course, not pleased about this, and they fought back. They managed to very nearly destroy Santiago at one point. They captured Valdivia and executed him. There was a huge resistance all throughout this history of Chile with the Mapuche, and the Spanish spent a lot of time, like, fortifying their towns against them, getting weapons to protect their people here. And at this time, there was not a lot of mining happening in Chile, like, not nearly like it was in Peru and Bolivia up there. So they were protecting like farms and stuff like that. It was not very cost effective for Spain. It got pretty neglected in terms of their other colonies because profit was not nearly that big. In fact, I think Spain was losing money on their colony in Chile. And they had the Mapuche fighting against them, who were very, very rough on them. So once Napoleon took over Spain in the early 1800s, oh, I forgot one other thing, real quick, just a side note. In 1578, Sir Francis Drake came by. He was a pirate belonging to England. He was BFFs with Queen Elizabeth I, and she pretty much let him do whatever he wanted. So he did whatever he wanted, and he sacked Valparaiso at one point, like I said, in 1578. But that's just a little side note. So Napoleon takes over Spain, and Chile is like, well, we still support Spain, but we don't support Napoleon. Not to mention, Chile's not very important to Spain as it was. So on September 18th, 1810, they declared autonomy within the Spanish Empire. And that's considered like Chile's national day. It's not its Independence Day. The independence movement was led by a man named Jose Miguel Carrera and his brothers. They started forming like an independent government within Chile, and then once Napoleon was out of the picture in Spain, it got back on its feet, they fought back, and it was a very brutal fight on Spain's part, coming and trying to reclaim this land. And the opposition was led by a man named Bernardo O'Higgins, and he essentially helped the soldiers here in Chile, along with some Argentinian soldiers as well, to defeat the Spanish. Independence was declared in 1818. Now, Chile's independence, the next 100 years or so, had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. A lot of highs in that the mining industry finally took off, brought a lot of revenue to Chile. There were people who had very high standards of living. There were also a lot of people who had very low standards of living. The Mapuche were still fierce resistance against all of this. And, as Chile started to slowly expand, the Mapuche were like, no, this is our land. You can't take it. So they had a boundary at where did it go? The Rio Biobío. It's right here. And this was Mapuche land down here, but that got taken over eventually. And of course, the Mapuche to this day are still not happy about it. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of territorial conflict as all the newer countries in South America, especially down here in the south, there was a lot of it. Try to figure out where the lines should be drawn. There was a war with Argentina in 1881 over the Strait of Magellan down here, which, they agreed to just share what they could, but Chile has the majority of the strait. And there was a huge conflict between 1879 and 1883 with Peru and Bolivia over this territory up here. And that's mainly because this is when the copper boom really started, and Chile was having some taxation problems that Bolivia and Peru were not happy about. Huge conflict. It's called the War of the Pacific, which Chile won, and they got to claim all this land. They cut off Bolivia's access to the sea. Chile was like, we promise we'll build you a railroad to the capital. La Paz is not far from this border. But it's not the best railroad, at least back then. It was, high up in the mountains and all that. It was very hard to maintain, so Bolivians were not too pleased about that. But that's what happened. Also, politics was very rocky at this point. Lots of transitions between the two major political parties. In 1891, there was a civil war in Chile, and the aftermath of that led to a couple of political changes in that new parties started to emerge. So there wasn't just the two main parties, there were multiple parties and parties within parties, and some parties that, disagreed with other parties but agreed with some aspects of them, and there were some parties that had the same beliefs as others, but they wanted it more extreme, extreme changes, and eventually socialism and communism came into Chile, and parties started to form around that. The main party to discuss in this part of its history were the radicals, which, as you can imagine, based on the name, were the more extreme left people and their beliefs, and socialism and communism, right? And there was a couple of transitions of power in terms of presidents throughout the early 20th century. But in 1970, a man named Salvador Allende was elected, and he was one of those very socialist, very leftist kind of leaders. Started to implement a lot of socialist ideas throughout Chile in terms of the government controlling industry and business and the economy. And there were people who were none too pleased about this. One of them was the United States, who of course did not want anything even remotely socialist happening anywhere on this side of the planet, and in parts of the other side as well. So they buddied up with some of the opposition to Allende. And in 1973, a military coup took over the government. Allende was killed in the conflict, and a man named Augusto Pinochet took over. Now, Pinochet is not a good figure in history. He's one of those very notoriously horrible leaders in terms of human rights abuses. There are lots of disappearances, thousands of deaths, people who, thought differently were arrested, tortured, and all of those horrible things. Something that we won't get into too big of a detail on a ASMR relaxation channel, right? Just know that Pinochet was a bad guy, right? He did just reverse all those socialist plans that Allende had implemented, and there was a little economic boom at first, and then there wasn't. It just kind of fizzled out after a couple of years. So then people were none too pleased again. Elections were held in 1989, and the people voted Pinochet out of office, and democracy returned to Chile, where it has remained to this day. It's a very strong, democratically run country. Politics have been really, really stable since then. In recent years, in 2010 was a pretty big year for Chile. They had a huge earthquake, the largest earthquake ever recorded. What was it, 9.4, I want to say? Massive earthquake. And there is also the instance of the miners. 33 miners were stuck in a copper mine up in that northern region up there. And the world watched, and on live TV, all 33 miners were rescued out of the mine. It just kind of put Chile on the world stage for just a moment there. In 2019, there were a lot of protests over rising prices in terms of housing. The subway prices drastically increased. At this point, Chile is a very highly, highly developed country, very, very modern, especially, down in here. So there was a big movement over that. And in 2021, a man named Gabriel Boric was elected president. He used to be a student protester, led a lot of protest movements, so he's one of those very liberal leftist leaders. He's one of the world's youngest leaders. He's almost my age. And what's funny about Gabriel Boric is that he's a huge Taylor Swift fan. And I'm a pretty big Taylor Swift fan too. And he used to run a Taylor Swift news update Twitter account. And one of the most iconic moments in Taylor Swift internet lore was when that account tweeted out, "Sorry, haven't posted lately. I was in jail," because he'd been arrested during a protest. And now he's the president of Chile. A huge Taylor Swift fan. He also really loves K-pop like I do. We both love Twice, one of our favorite groups. So he's probably my best friend. We just have never met. So very interesting to see where the country goes from there. He was very, I should say that, he got the most votes out of any president ever in Chilean history. So, high expectations for this guy to run the country. And basically that's where Chile is in its history today. So let me flip through this book for you. I wonder if I should, why don't I do this? Slide this sideways for a bit. And so it's a bit easier to show you this book. There we go. Topple's going to help out. There we go, Chile. So here we can see some very, very lush, misty little forest trail up here. That's pretty neat. Some street art in Valparaiso. This is in Santiago, the capital. This building here, you can't really tell from this picture, this is the tallest building in South America. There's a better picture of it later on. Here we can see a political map of Chile, much better than what I can show you on my other big maps, but you can see this is where the majority of the major cities are. Up here's the desert. Oh, here marks the Atacama Giant, where some of the early peoples built huge art, and they just drew a huge giant in the rocks. Very interesting. Here's a shot of the Atacama Desert. This is the Valley of the Moon, it's called. Look at this. Very beautiful wildflower field, and then big mountains in the back. So this is after an earthquake in Valdivia in 1960. And this is Magellan going by. He named Tierra del Fuego because he saw fires on it, because it means land of fire, even though it's totally covered in ice. So here is a physical map of Chile. You can see the Atacama Desert, Ojos del Salado, some major cities there as well, and then lots of the other islands down here. Oh, that's a neat little coastline, isn't it? Up here we've got some geysers. Of course, very seismically active place. You're going to get stuff like geysers. Here we can see some cities. This is Antofacasta. It's up in the north. Coastal city, as you can tell, used to be part of Bolivia until Chile took it over during that big war. And this is in Valparaiso. Lots of very colorful buildings there. Here is it's like a grass farm for cattle. The Central Valley. This is in Patagonia. This is basically, when I hear Patagonia, I picture this kind of landscape, like barren, treeless, but very grassy still, and then mountains and snow as well. In one of my National Geographics, there was a really good article about finding the southernmost tree, and they went all through Patagonia to find the southernmost tree, and it was, of course, like maybe 5 inches tall, but it was really interesting to hear about their adventures in Patagonia, trying to find the southernmost tree. So this is in General Carrera Lake. It's very beautiful, isn't it? Look at this. Very cool. And here's in the Atacama Desert. Isn't that something? Rust-colored ridges, it says. I like that. And then, of course, the opposite. We've got skiing up in the Andes. And this is interesting. This talks about how the northern coastline gets lots and lots of fog, so they've built these nets to try to trap the moisture so that they can get drinking water. Here are some Magellanic penguins. I went through a big penguin phase when I was little, and I memorized every type of penguin. So the Magellanics are known for these stripes, and they also have these spots above their little eyes here. They're very cute. I love penguins. And so this is in the Atacama Desert. This is what happens after it rains. All these flowers are below the surface, and once they get some moisture, they just bloom like crazy, crazy, crazy. It happens in the Gobi Desert too. Really beautiful. Here, it's a puma. Where I live, we call them mountain lions. The big cats in the area. Up here, we can see these are guanacos, right? Does it say? Sinalpacas. Oh, it doesn't say. Because I don't think these are alpacas. It doesn't say. But anyway, one of the many different, humpless camel-based creatures living there. Here's a rhea, sort of like an ostrich, a big old flightless bird. And here's an otter on Chiloy Island. He's got a crab, turtle, a crab. Look at those. Yeah, he's having a snack. The national flower, the copihue. It's very, very pretty. Look at this frog. It's a male Darwin's frog. Little pointy nose. And here's a pretty whale. This is in the, where is it? The Nazca Desventuradas Marine Park. I didn't mention, but the Desventuradas Islands is one of their territories, but it's uninhabited because it's a wildlife reserve. This tree is called a monkey puzzle tree because it's a little jungle gym, but it's also covered in like these spiky brambles. So it'd be a puzzle for a monkey, I suppose. That's why it's called that. And look at this scene. Isn't this so peaceful? I would love to go hiking in a place like that. So beautiful. Alright, so these are guanacos, right? Yes, these are guanacos. So maybe the other one was alpacas, I'm not sure. They all kind of look the same to me. This is the national animal. It's a huemul, and it's a type of deer. But it also kind of looks like an alpaca. So cute. Oh, so here's some of those giant artworks carved into the rocks here. It kind of looks like dinosaurs, but they're just really big alpacas, in a sense. So another famous thing about the indigenous peoples of the day is that they mummified all their dead, and essentially, sorry if that's a little creepy because that was once a living person, they would basically just like bundle them up and carry them up to the mountains and leave them in a snowpack. So mummies are still being discovered all the time, and they're pretty well preserved. You can see she still has all her long braided hair here. That's how they used to bury their dead. Here we see a map of the many different peoples that lived throughout the area. You can see the Mapuche right here, along with many others that lived like down in the far south too. Along with you can see the Aymara up here. People mostly associated with Peru, along with the Quechua people. But they still live in that part of Chile today. Here is Pedro de Valdivia, who basically started the colonization of Chile. Let's see, European exploration. So here's Magellan sailing along the coast, and we found the Strait of Magellan there. Diego de Almagro was the first European to arrive in what is now Chile. But then Pedro de Valdivia came in and started colonizing it. This is, make sure I get his name right, Caupolicán, who was a big Mapuche resistance fighter who led the battle for a long, long time. And here's some other Mapuche ready to fight. Here we see, oh, this is what Santiago looked like. Very interesting. And here's Bernardo O'Higgins, who won independence for Chile and was its first, it wasn't a president, what was he called? I don't think it says on here, but, oh, Supreme Director, that's what he was called. And here's Valparaiso in the 1840s. I really love old pictures of cities like that. And this is a copper and silver mine in 1820. Here's a map of what happened in the War of the Pacific. Chile before, gained in 1874, and then gained in 1884. Here's that railroad I told you about. And yeah, as you can see, Bolivia lost this whole coastline. Here is Salvador Allende, and this is the presidential palace under attack during the military coup, the event where Allende lost his life. This was a very popular singer named Victor Jara, who sang a lot of like, was it Venceremos, we will triumph. Like, he wrote songs for Salvador for his presidential campaign, and he was like held in a big sports stadium where a lot of political prisoners were held and tortured, and where he lost his life, and now it's called the Victor Jara Stadium or something like that. I'm not sure about the full name. Here's Augusto Pinochet, and here are some Mapuche people today. Like I said, they're still fighting for their rights. They're still fighting for proper representation today. the people who are always going to be standing up for themselves and fighting for what's right, which is very admirable. This is the Congress. Here's a politician named Camila Vallejo. So we can see a bunch of Chilean flags here, very patriotic. And she was president at the time of this book. This is Michelle Bachelet. And yeah, she was elected twice as president. Chile's first and only female president also. So here's the flag of Chile. It says the bottom half of Chile's flag is red, which represents the bloodshed during the fight for independence. Above it is a blue square with a white star. The blue stands for the sky, and the star symbolizes the power of government. Next to the square is a white stripe, which stands for the snow on the Andes. The flag was adopted in 1817. And this is the president's residence today. Oh, that rhymes. So here you can see a better picture of that big tower. And here's a map of like downtown Santiago. Like the main like government buildings and important places throughout the city. Here's the Supreme Court building up here. And here's a person casting their vote. Ooh, he's got some very purpley grapes there. Looks yummy. And here is a copper mine. And here they're mining for lithium. So a new resource found in the desert up in Chile. Lithium's used for a lot of the batteries we use in our cell phones. So very important mineral. Here's a resources map over here. You can see all the mining happening up here. And lots of agriculture, fishing, things like that down here. And sheep down here in Patagonia. And these guys are sorting out some firewood for sale. There's also a very big nut industry in Chile. We've got some fishermen here. They're fishing some fish. This guy is sorting some meat, it looks like. And here's a telescope being built to put in the desert to observe the stars. Some icebergs here in Patagonia. And here's their money. They use the Chilean peso. These guys are playing chess outside. Oh, so look at this population map. It looks pretty barren, but you have to look close to see the little pockets of populations there. But pretty bare up here, pretty bare down here. And this is a Peruvian immigrant. Since the economy is a lot more strong and stable than in Peru, there's a lot of immigrants. So look at this building. This is in Puerto Varas. So during the 1800s, there was a lot of immigrants coming from Europe, in particular Germany. All right, I just looked outside my window wondering why there's so many loud cars tonight, and because there's an intersection right outside my window, and the power's out on the traffic light, so lots of cars are stopping and starting, so I apologize for that. Oh, that's terrible. Anyway, so this is like a German-built church, and there's lots of really neat buildings like this throughout Chile, built by European immigrants. Also, a lot of people from the Basque country, which is like a region in like France and Spain, kind of near their border. Lots of people from that area coming. It's also saying here that there's people from Afghanistan, Rwanda, Iraq, and Haiti, all throughout the world. There's another picture of Michelle Bachelet. And 3 generations of a Mapuche family, it says. And these are Rapa Nui people. They live on Easter Island. They're the native peoples there. And these are Afro-Chileans, people descended from Africans that were brought over during the Spanish colonial times. And here's a mass happening. It says it's on Easter Island. And the Metropolitan Cathedral in Santiago. Isn't that beautiful? Let's look at some of the details here. You know, Catholic cathedrals are sometimes so intricately beautiful. All the little tiny details are so neat. This is St. Teresa of the Andes, a saint from Chile. There's a little baby getting baptized. And a celebration for the Virgin Mary. She's being carried through the streets. And these are Protestants, it says, at a service. And here is a mosque. It's in Coquimbo, it says. And these are really neat. The Mapuche make these statues as like grave markers. Really, really interesting. But they're all different, right? I like that. And this is a Mapuche Shaman. A very ancient practice that's still done today. And this is neat. This is the UNESCO Heritage Site on Chiloy. Because once Christianity came over, people really embraced it. But they didn't have the supplies to really make churches, so they built these little chapels by hand without nails or anything. And they're still around today. Very, very neat. Built totally by hand. Some Mapuche jewelry. I like that. I bet it's really jingly. And this is Gabriela Mistral, Nobel Prize winning poet, right? She won the prize for literature, so I believe so. And another very beloved poet is Pablo Neruda. Very beloved poet. Roberto Bolaño, famous. Another poet. And another author is Isabel Allende. Chile's often called the land of poets, apparently, because lots of poets and writers come out of Chile. He's playing a zampoña. Really beautiful looking pan flute there. And some folk music being played. You can tell it's pretty lively. And here's a famous pop star named Ana Tijoux. And we have some dancers doing the cueca, the traditional dance of Chile. And here's some of those moai statues on Easter Island, right? Everyone knows what these are. Everybody's seen these. They're pretty famous around the world. Some more beautiful murals in Valparaiso. There's a potter making some pots. Ooh, this is at Carnival. It says during a parade for Carnival. There's a family enjoying a day out. We've got some little kind of shack homes here. This is on Chiloy. You can tell by the architecture here. They're moving this house on the sleds, relocating it. And here's some students on their way to school in their uniforms. Look at this picture. This guy's got a big old log that he's taken home on his bike. And enjoying a really lovely tea, it looks like. Very happy with music and everything. Cooking some like traditional grill on these hot rocks. Yum yum. And some steak as well. Yum yum. This is a dessert called alfajores. Alfajor. And this is Alexis Sanchez, very famous footballer from Chile. A little toy that's used kind of like a cup and ball kind of toy. And here's a Chilean rodeo. And look at this celebration. Riding their bikes with pictures of Jesus, it looks like, on the front there. Lots of different pictures. Very patriotic looking bikes too, huh? I like that. And see, that's going to be the end of that book. So thank you so much for watching this slightly chaotic video about Chile. I've got some other videos about Chile for you, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good